NFL draft is officially concluded, and the Chiefs have 7 new prospects coming into the building. We're going to run you through all of them today with Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, draft fans. We are brought to you today by Ultimate Football GM. It is the best and most comprehensive game you can get into on your phone about how to run a franchise. You can go to ultimate-gm.com and get signed up today. You get a 100% boost if you use our code. That's locked on in all caps. Go check out Ultimate Football GM right now. We have a ton that has happened today. Chiefs kind of messing with my schedule. I'm live here from RGR East. A lot going on. I have some qualms that I'm going to have to pick. You guys are going to be talking me off of ledges today. Matt Derrick is here from ChiefsDigest.com. Chris is here. I'm Ryan from RogueAPC.com, NFL 33 and RGR Football.
I'm just surprised you have the energy to say all that after the weekend. So
I don't. I'm running on caffeine and aspirin.
That's how the draft is. That's how everybody should be at the end of the draft. You're just barely alive.
Touche. I will say this. I did enjoy watching the NFL draft, the 4th through 7th rounds. I did enjoy watching Matt Miller, a guy we've had on and talked to before, actually doing the NFL draft on ESPN. I thought that was really cool. A lot to talk about when we start looking at the Chiefs picks, so let's just get into that right now. Their 4th round pick, I was kind of surprised that they went that direction, although it does make a lot of sense because they need a safety. They're going to need somebody to step in and really take over the Brian Cook type role that he played last year when it comes to special teams.
Yeah, and to me, I mean, I think we talked about this, the other day. To me, this is the question about Justin Reid. If Justin Reid's contract has an out after 23, there's basically an option for 24. If Justin Reid's not in your long-term plans, now's the time to go after a replacement. And hey, 4th round safety, I mean, that's in the ballpark of being able to be a guy who, year 2 can contribute. And Connor is exactly what the Chiefs like. I mean, he's a versatile guy. He's played corner. He's played safety. He's a cover guy. He can play in the slot. He can move around a lot of different places. I mean, that's just your absolute definition of a Chiefs safety. It's a 4th round guy, so let's see what develops and everything. It doesn't mean anything. I mean, it could be that it doesn't pan out. Justin Reid's still here for 2 more seasons, and you're in good shape that way. But if he develops and can be the player that they believe that he can be, which is somebody who can play inside, outside, front, back, I mean, this is the versatility that the Chiefs crave in that position.
Well, and the other thing that really,
about him.
I was just going to say really quick, Ryan. The other thing that stands out to me is everything I read. He's going to be a core special teams guy. That is very important. The special teams units need to get better from last year. Sorry, that's all I was really going to say.
No, that is an important piece. I don't think you can draft based just on special teams, but certainly Dave Toub's going to be very happy about that. My favorite aspect about him is he is a blitzer. He brings it when he is sent, and I like that, freeing up some of the nickel corner blitzes, being able to actually play a little bit more diverse coverage. I think that there's a little bit more zone fire in our future. I'm looking for that as well. Nice thing about Chamarri Conner is I had him as a high 5th round pick on my board, so I like the area that they went here, and he ends up with being in the safety group is how I had him on the board. He's number 6 in the athletic matrix overall. He's number 10 in production in terms of denying the ball, taking it away, forced fumbles, TFLs, eagle and bear rate. He's all up there. He's one of the sleeper guys that was productive at the college level that should be able to translate his game. I'm pretty optimistic about that. The role is going to be the role, and like you said, Matt, he's not the only guy in Justin Reid that might have an out after this contract year. There's some 1-year contracts there too. Getting younger at this position goes with everything they did last year. Now this secondary is full of young guys with chips on their shoulder and something to prove.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that they're going to keep Connor as a safety. I mean, obviously, L'Jarius Sneed was in this kind of category of the same type of player, and they moved him to corner. They're at this point, Chiefs aren't talking like that. I mean, they are talking as though that they are preparing to use him as a safety. But again, I mean, the way that the NFL is changing, I mean, that safety position, especially that nickel safety or dime safety, is evolving quite quickly. And we've seen the Chiefs go back and forth a little bit about, whether they're playing more, three corners or 3 safeties. A guy like Connor lets you go back to it, and I'm glad that Chris did bring it up, because the guy played more than 800 special team snaps in college. That's a ton. I mean, if he doesn't pan out defensively and all you get out of him is an ace special teams player, well, that's okay. I mean, Dorian O'Daniel turned into that, and that was not a failure of a draft pick. I mean, he gave you 4, quality seasons of being a solid special teams player.
Chris agrees, I'm pretty sure, but he's going to tell us here in a second because special teams is Chris's thing.
It's not my thing, but thank you, Matt. I took your cue from last night and muted myself. No, I do think that it's one of the things I want to say. I don't think that you draft him just because of his special teams ability, but I do think that it plays into who you draft. If you have guys that are ranked around the same and one's going to be a core special teams guy versus another that isn't, and they're the same type of player. In this case, they got a guy that I think can step in and really help, and they really need it considering what they went through last year on special teams. So I like that aspect of it. I like what he brings as a safety, and I do think that he's going to be one of those guys that can step in. And I'm curious to see what they do this year, if they go 4 safeties or 5, but we're a long way from cut downs at this point.
We certainly are. And if we're going to have to cut, we're going to have to cut some other guys because there's other acquisitions on this team. There's an edge rusher that isn't Felix that we're going to have to talk about. We're going to do that right after this.
And I'm going to tell you guys about one of my favorite games I've ever played on my phone in Ultimate Football GM. This is a fantastic game. You guys need to go check it out. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. You've heard us talk about this mobile game app for a while. It's not as easy as you might think to create a dynasty. When you play Ultimate Football GM, you get to control and manage every strategic aspect of your team as you play through seasons and lead your team to glory trying to build a historic dynasty. You get a draft. You get to do exactly what we have just been sitting through for the past couple of days. You get to go draft the players. You get to go hire your coaches. You get to choose the schemes. You get to go bring in players that fit those schemes and try to develop them and get them better. And you try to win championships. Won a couple of championships playing over 25 years. It's a lot of fun. You guys need to check this game out. With Ultimate Football GM, you are responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, managing the finances, navigating through free agency, the draft, injuries, player personnel issues, and the ups and downs of a season. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. Locked On Chiefs listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in all caps in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps. So make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today.
In a classic Brett Veach move today, he decided to move picks around so that I couldn't have a nice, clean segment on a given pick. Matt, a couple of moves here. Going up to 119, obviously, was something they felt they needed to do. After that, they were without, the 6th round pick that they had given up, or was it the 5th that they then had to trade back out for? In the end, it comes out as a wash. They still have a 5th round pick now after another acquisition. That seems about right. But what does that tell you about how they felt about the rest of the field after the Chamarri Connor selection?
Yeah, I mean, to me, and looking at the entire class, I mean, the Chiefs hammered away at just premium positions. There wasn't anything going off the board about going into anything other than the meat and potatoes positions of the draft: defensive line, offensive line, secondary. They hit receiver because it was a need, but I mean, this was, like I said, this is a very meat and potatoes draft. There's not a lot of risk here. I mean, maybe you could say it was a little bit of a risk on day 3 with, taking a couple of smaller school guys. I drafted a couple of players ahead of where I probably would have taken them and where I saw a lot of them being prospected and projected. But if that's your guy, go get him. And in a couple of these positions, it was clearly those players. I mean, Keondre Coburn was clearly a player that they were ready to take at that spot. Connor was a guy that they moved up for to get that. BJ Thompson was a guy I know that they were interested in. Wasn't sure they would take him that early. But this is, I think that throughout the whole thing, I mean, I think Brett Veach did what he said he was going to do, that he was going to stay true to his board and they were going to focus on the premium positions. And I don't think there's a whole lot of risk. I mean, we'll see how much downside there is to this draft in the long term, but I think that they played it relatively safe while at the same time trying to maximize value.
Chris does actually like the concept of value as well.
I'm done muting myself for this episode, so my apologies. Yes, I do appreciate the concept of value. I do think that it's awesome that they were able to trade away one of their 6th, 4th, 5th round next year, just because I do think that building draft capital going forward is going to be important for this team to continue to stay as young as they possibly can and be able to go and get guys and have those picks to be able to do so. So I like that move as well. I like the Keondre Coburn pick. I think that you're looking at a guy that can step in and really help you at defensive tackle. It's going to be a question whether or not he can start year one, but I definitely think he's going to be a guy that can come in and contribute. The other big thing about defensive tackle, they don't have anybody on the roster that's on this roster currently that's assigned, because Coburn hasn't signed yet, that will be on the roster as a DT in 2024.
And Coburn is a guy that has the size at 335 pounds. He played well at Texas. He was a part of a duo down there that maybe could have come to fruition. Mauro Jomo could have been on this roster too if the Eagles hadn't gone and snatched him away the pick beforehand. But Coburn brings you girth, but he also has some pass rush. He produced over 30 pressures last season. And I think that's kind of a nice mix. He can play the zero tech. He can play the one tech. He can tilt. He can do all the things you need in the A gaps, but he can also get into that gap and get after the quarterback. And I think that's what I like about him the most. And I also find that it's very interesting that you guys elected to go right past my guy, because finally the Kansas City Chiefs have a speed rusher. And that is a man that is played first at Baylor and later at Stephen F. Austin and BJ Thompson, someone that is mistakenly listed as a linebacker on a lot of places around the interwebs right now, folks. He is 243 pounds. He is 6'6", and he is an edge rusher. And I do like the aspect is finally that's like a little bit of lightning to go with the thunder that George Karlaftis has brought, and Felix is kind of somewhere in the middle for me. So I feel like now you have a gamut, Matt, from going from power to burst to speed, and all that rush can change gears and hopefully change up what the quarterbacks are able to do against them.
Yeah,
Hey,
you stole my lead.
You're not the only one excited about the BJ Thompson pick. Just wanted to show you that.
Good job, Ira. Good job.
Yeah, you stole my lead because, with the Chiefs hitting defensive line in this on day 3, it was thunder and lightning. I mean, they got a guy who is a lean, long, once again, you guys would say spag type of guy, even though he doesn't maybe have the spags as heft, but he's got the speed. And this is, I mean, Thompson's the kind of guy that absolutely Joe Cullen should have a lot of fun trying to sculpt into a player. You can't teach some of the attributes and the assets that he has. We'll see if the Chiefs decide to put a little bit of poundage on him, or they go ahead and leave him where he is so that he can be that kind of player. But it's something that a flavor that, once again, that the Chiefs offensive line doesn't have. So it's different. And then, Coburn is the exact opposite. He's almost 100 pounds bigger and on the inside, and something that, once again, I mean, the Chiefs have lacked. I mean, we thought that maybe they might have that in trying to bring in Danny Shelton last year, but they haven't had a real, true nose or a one tech that they can just, plug over a center and can be a guy that eats up the line. Even Derek Nottie is not really that guy. So, to have that, and if you have not heard or seen his press conference yet, the excitement that he has with the idea that he was going to be playing alongside Chris Jones was absolutely amazing. But that's exactly what the Chiefs need. I mean, they need a companion for Chris Jones that can, eat up things inside. And that's what Coburn's got the potential to do. So, yeah, I really like the approach that they went as far as getting speed on the outside and getting some meat on the inside. And tell you what, that's really hard to do now that every single freaking defensive tackle in college thinks that he can be Aaron Donald. And none of them are Aaron Donald because they can't bench press 30 reps on the bench press at 280.
Really quick, just because you bring up bench press and you bring up lifting, I thought it was interesting. I saw Rashee Rice squat 500 pounds, which is impressive for a wide receiver his size. Just want to throw that out there. I still like that pick on day 2. But getting back to a guy like BJ Thompson, one of the things that I liked about what I've been reading about him and as I'm looking more into him, it does sound like they can add more weight, and they think that he will be fine adding that weight. He's not going to lose much of his speed by adding, 10, 15, 20 pounds, and that could give him the ability to do a lot of things. The other thing about Coburn that really could help Kansas City is you saw where they struggled against, the Philly 4th and 1. That is a situation where you need a guy with heft. You need a guy that has the ability to, dive in, stand the center up, get low, and keep people back. And I think that's going to become an even bigger thing since it isn't changing in the rule book. I think other teams are going to start using it more. So it's going to be something that Kansas City is going to have to watch for.
It certainly is. I think as we roll forward, we also have to get to Nick Jones, and then we're going to have fresh UDFA signings come in here as well. I like the fact that it was heavy defense on day 3. That's the way that I felt that it had to go. I have a question with some of the things that were chosen to be passed on, but clearly the guys that got guys that they like. And I want to talk about the overall philosophy of this draft. When we get back, we're going to tell you guys about some of our pals first.
And I'm going to tell you about our pals over at Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious snack but don't want all the sugar and the calories, you need the best tasting protein bar ever, Built Bar. You absolutely have to try these. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real dark chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. These Built Bars only have 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't have to wait to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering Built Bars at Built.com, but now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club while you still get your specialty flavors at Built.com. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today. Go to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate bar, or coconut puff. If you're close to Sam's Club, you can go and get some of the flavors that they have there in brownie batter puff and churro puff. You can thank us later.
What I'm thanking Brett Veach for about later is that I did feel like when they got to the point where they could go to the Thompson, Coburn, and Nick Jones picks, it did feel like moving back from this draft to next year's draft to reacquire that 5th round, felt like they'd said, okay, we've got our major goals accomplished. We have a couple of guys we know we like. We're probably higher on than anybody else. We're going to sit back and take our picks where we can take them. And that resulted in those 2 picks. And Nick Jones is a guy that I think is a developmental prospect that has a lot of upside. He's not the best athlete. He's somewhere in the 30s in the matrix in the CB ranks. That's not the end-all, be-all. We've seen players without elite athleticism be able to play in this defense as well. He comes from a system that is balanced. He can play man, he can play zone. And my favorite thing about him in this last season, 14 PBUs. He attacks the ball, and that's the one spot that I feel like, Matt, this secondary needs to improve on, is taking the ball away from the opposing offense.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I mean, and that's one thing that, Brett Veach has consistently generally favored, has been guys that are productive in the defensive secondary, that, whether they're getting interceptions or not, that they're breaking up passes, that they're getting their hands on the ball. Now, maybe the argument could be made that maybe they do favor breaking up passes and defending passes a little bit more than actually getting your hands on the ball. One should lead to the other. But that is at least something that's a common trait amongst all these guys, and something that Brett Veach has valued. And once again, to make Chris happy, Nick Jones, special teams ace. Your 7th round draft pick, if he's going to make the roster, he's going to play every single thing on special teams. And again, I think he had a couple of blocked punts in college. This is a guy that, and I asked him about, playing special teams, and he gets it. So, he understands it's not an opportunity to play football. So that's another factor, but for your 7th round guys, it's a big factor.
Well, and that's huge for him, because that is the way he's going to make the roster. He's not going to make it as a guy that can probably start just based on what Kansas City already has at that position. So you're looking at trying to bring in guys that can be your core special teamers. Don't forget, Chris Lamons was one of their core special teams guys. He didn't ever play on defense. He was just a core special teams guy that they kept at corner. And so I think that that's important. But the other thing when you start looking at the 7th round draft picks, you're drafting those guys because you don't know that you can get them to Kansas City if they're an undrafted free agent. That's the big reason you go get those guys. Maybe he doesn't pan out. Maybe he doesn't make the roster year 1. You can't feel bad about a 7th round pick not making the roster. Maybe he's a guy that sticks around on the practice squad this year and ends up being somebody that can contribute in year 2. We'll see. But it does sound like he can contribute on special teams, which is going to help him make this roster, help him with a chance to make this roster, I should say.
Practice squad is right where we're talking about right now. Is Chiefs starting to get some UDFA signings in here. They're moving through what is the land rush that is post-draft action. But Matt, this is a Super Bowl championship team. Practice squad spots are going to be hard to find. I think overall it is about the selections they made. We'll see who else can pan out. On the whole, when I take a look at accomplishing what they had to accomplish, they went and filled their top 3 needs, 1, 2, 3 in the top 100 picks. They came back and they got players that they feel have upside and a trait they can bank on. I feel like that, in my mind, is the definition of a B to a B plus actual draft class. I'm going to go with a B plus right now because I like the upside of a couple of the day 3 guys, but they got their job done. It's hard to live up to last year, Matt. But how does this feel comparatively to you? What do you grade this one at?
I'm trying to figure out how I'm supposed to talk you down from a ledge when you give it a B plus. I mean, that's a pretty solid grade here.
I demand
because we haven't talked about him missing out on his defensive end that he wanted.
There you go.
Sorry, fullback.
We're not gonna.
And I tell you what. I tell you what, seems like you're right in the where Chiefs fans are. I had to put a poll up on Twitter, and right now 65% they're giving it a B, almost 18% are an A, 15% a C, and less than 2% a D or an F. So not a lot of dissatisfaction with this draft, and I don't think there is any reason to be. I mean, like you said, I think that they accomplished what they wanted to do. And really interesting to see. We'll get a chance to talk to Brett Veach on Monday, and I'm going to be interested to see, kind of what his philosophy was after the fact, because like I said, there's not a whole lot of risk in this. I mean, it's not like that they took any positions that, are volatile positions in an NFL draft. I mean, they took things that you just need a lot of guys for. I mean, you need more defensive linemen. You need more offensive line help. You need more corners and safeties. I mean, they went at places that, hey, if these guys hit, it's great. But at the same time, if they don't, it's not going to be deal breakers, but they're taking shots at positions of need. And so I by and large, I think that they generally got the players that they wanted. I don't think there was a whole lot. The only thing I could really say, and I know that the Chiefs were high on Felix. I think they could have taken Felix later and still been happy with him. But, that I think to a certain degree, you probably have to at least feel a little bit like you had to settle at 31 because there were opportunities to get somebody else if the trade opportunities to move up. I mean, I think the Chiefs, and Brad Veach will never say this, and I don't blame him. He's never going to put his guy in that spot. But I think they would have loved to have landed somebody else, but they're happy settling for Felix and Aduke Ozama because I feel like that, hey, they were like, if that's the guy that we end up with, great. But they certainly were shooting for higher than that.
Well, and who knows what that means for the rest of the positions that they took, in rounds 2 and 3, how they would have been able to move in and go get those guys. I do think it's interesting. We sit here and we talk about this draft, but if you look back at last year's draft and you look at this year's draft, they've basically rebuilt that defensive end position in 2 drafts. They still have a lot of work to do at defensive tackle. They still have some work to do at wide receiver, but they've also restocked the wide receiver a little bit with the addition of Kadarius Toney, with Sky Moore last year, Rashee Rice this year. So I think you're feeling pretty good about those positions. They're turning over some of the bigger positions on a regular basis now, and the big question that we had going into this draft was who was going to be the left tackle. It looks like that's going to be Jawan Taylor, and now that they have competition for right tackle. So I think you have to feel pretty good if they can get a right tackle that is even just a little bit above average as a solid starter. You've got to feel pretty good about the offensive line they're going to put around Patrick. So overall, I like the draft. I like what they were able to get done. I do think that obviously there's always going to be more guys that you wish they could have gotten, but overall, I like where they went with this. And when you start looking at how many picks they had, we always, Ryan and I always thought there's no way they're going to make this many picks. So it made sense to be able to trade up, go get your guys. And I think that they attacked the positions they wanted to attack.
And you make a really interesting point, too, about defensive line, because I remember being in Indianapolis at the Combine last year and coming off the way that the Chiefs ended the season, there was a lot of, talk about the fact that the Chiefs needed to do exactly what they did the previous offseason with the offensive line after the disappointing loss in the Super Bowl, was completely blow up and rebuild the defensive line. And Brett Veach was like, you know what? we need to be a little bit slower. That's not a 1-year fix. This is something that we're going to have to do over a couple of years. And true to his word, I mean, that's exactly what they've done. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of turnover on that line. There's new faces. I mean, Chris Jones is obviously still there, but you look at now, they've put 2 first-round draft picks into that. They have invested in free agency. I mean, they've invested in other draft picks. I mean, they have put resources into that defensive line. And no, it was not a 1-year fix. But my goodness, I mean, if this defensive front lives up to its potential, I mean, this was a really good pass rush last season. I mean, it was more of, I think, a collection and Chris Jones and everybody trying to help out Chris. But if Chris Jones is able to have anywhere close to the year he did a year ago with this group, I think this group is better than they were last year. So in theory, maybe the sky's the limit on how good this group can be as a pass rushing unit, as maybe being better than the individual parts.
I got to hope so, because I'm about ready to have the defense step up and be able to hold its own with this Mahomes magic. That's the key to a dynasty. We're going to talk about what this means about how the dynasty comes together, who joins it via UDFA, and if anything crazy happens here in the next 48 hours with some veteran players maybe being able to be moved around the board here in the NFL.
That's a huge question, though, Ryan, is who now gets released?
Yep.
That's the biggest thing that you're going to be dealing with over the next couple of days. Yeah, you're going to get UDFAs, but what players get released because they just had their replacement? We saw a huge trade, DeAndre Swift going to the Eagles earlier after they drafted Jamar Gibbs. So something to watch there. Who's going to be available at what position? I think that could be something to watch as well.
Thank you all for being with us on this draft weekend and all the extra content. We appreciate your like, sub, and bell that you hit on YouTube right now if you haven't already. And also, make sure you check out ChiefsDigest.com, NFL 33, RGR Football, Locked On Sports, all of it together. It's been a long road to get to this point, but you have a fresh class in Kansas City, and the season's right around the corner. OTAs are in just a week, I want to say, Matt.
Well, you got rookie minicamp next weekend, and then right after that will be the 2 weeks after that will be the beginning of OTAs. So we're getting right around the corner. 3 weeks from now, we're going to see this whole team as a unit out there on the field.
Start your engines, folks. It's about to get real. Thank you for spending your time with us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll be back with you for Monday's show, and we'll talk to you then.